welcome to the call. Great to see you all here. We will record this call and we'll get underway just now. Laura, if you wouldn't mind opening the slides. And we'll get in. We've got a fantastic team tonight helping with all of the tech, so hopefully this will be fairly seamless, but if there are any issues, we will get through it. So first of all, I'll introduce myself. My name's Nick Seaton. I'm the CEO for Parents for Climate. It's an absolute privilege to have this role, but it's also something I'm really passionate about. You'll see my photo on the next slide. It'll be a picture of me with my youngest when we were at the an event in a local electorate to where I am here in Sydney. I'm on Gadigal Wangal country. And yeah, she's a little bit older now, but we were speaking on stage when that photo was taken to a crowd of about 500. And we were really excited and impressed with the impact that we were able to have there. We're going to talk a little bit about what we're going to be able to achieve in the lead up to the next election too. But before I get started proper, I would like to acknowledge country and acknowledge the traditional owners of the Gadigal land and the Wangal people who are the traditional owners of the lands on which I'm speaking from to you today. And I'd like to show my respect and share that their sovereignty was never ceded. And I'd love to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands where each of you are calling from tonight. We honour and pay respect to their culture and heritage, spirituality, and contribution of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and their elders, past, present, and emerging. And we acknowledge the pivotal role that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people continue to play within the Australian community. We recognise that there's no climate justice without social justice for our First Nations people. And I would love you to introduce yourself in the chat and acknowledge the country that you're calling from tonight. It'd be fantastic to see the geographic diversity of the people here tonight. Hopefully you're in a time zone that allows this to be possible. I appreciate it's different wherever you are. Hopefully your kids are in bed or they managed to put themselves to bed. But it is incredible to see so many of you on the call tonight. This is a significant moment. It's not just World Children's Day, but tonight is the start of something really special. It's the start of our next campaign, the Protect What You Love campaign. And together, I know that we will build the vibe and build a powerful plan to help secure a safe climate for our kids to thrive. So quickly, I'd like to share the agenda with you so that we can get underway. First, I'll give you a quick overview and vision on the next slide. Thanks, Laura. And probably the person that everybody's here to hear from, Steve Biddulph, will actually share a little bit about the research and writing that he's been sharing with the world and how parents can actually rise to the challenge of this moment and not just respond to the external world, but also themselves. We have an amazing expert in Australian climate politics, Sophia Walter, who will talk to us about how parents and caregivers can shift climate politics, and we'll have space for a Q&A. Please keep all your questions in the chat and we will bank them and get them into the Q&A. We won't have time to answer them as we go, but we will make sure that there is ample time for a decent conversation after our first two speakers. And lastly, Mike, our campaign expert, will introduce what we can do right now, basically the action that we can all take in this moment. And I'm really looking forward to having you join us and come with us on the next stage. So before we get started, I do want to ask you one important question, just to see how everybody's going in the room and to make sure everybody's here. If you can, we'll do a quick poll. So Bianca will set up a poll on the screen and we'll see how everybody responds. Your answers are anonymous, and I'd really like to get a read on how you're feeling on this question right now in this moment. Please be honest. It's okay if you feel unsure, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how inspired do you feel to take action towards a safe climate for our kids right now? The poll will be open for the next 60 seconds, and I will ask the same question at the end of the call. My goal is to make sure that you all feel much more inspired by the end of this call. I can see that there's some staunch arrivals in that poll already, which is really exciting to see because it means this is absolutely the best and the right crowd of people that we can hope for here tonight. I can also see that there's maybe a little bit of uncertainty in some of the lower numbers, and I'm really looking forward to helping to boost those with the support of all of our speakers here tonight. So, a little bit about the context we're in. I'll move on to in a moment. But thank you very much, Bianca, for running that poll for us. I'm going to take a quick screenshot so that I can see how that compares to the end of the call. So, moving on. Look, as parents, caregivers, guardians, grandparents, we all have and feel a deep duty of care for our kids now and into the future. And that means that, we really need to keep a roof over their heads right now, but it also is understandable that the cost of living is the biggest issue for the majority of Australians in the country, the majority of Australian families. And our latest research in partnership with the Climate Council has found that the vast majority of parents are also concerned about climate change. Yes, we have the capacity to be concerned about more than one issue, and it figures. Parents can't be expected to choose between protecting our kids now and a safe climate for their future. Unfortunately, though, a belief has grown in the political class that people aren't so worried about climate anymore, and that the election will be decided by appealing to cost of living solutions. If we want a safe climate for our kids, we need to change that story, and we can, because those stories are related. Parents for Climate has a plan and the facts to back it up. And now I'm inviting each of you to be the courage to turn our climate anxiety into action. Thankfully, we have some experts here to help us. In a moment, Steve Biddulph will talk to us about how we work with that anxiety and how we can turn it into action and look after ourselves. Sophia Walter will tell us where the political opportunities are for us to act together. And Mike Pulsford, our campaign manager, will share our plan, which we're calling Protect What You Love. We want healthy, affordable energy for every family. So, it's vitally important that we tell a story about how climate solutions can ease cost of living pressures. Government also has a role to play in ensuring that every family can access climate solutions that ease cost of living pressures. And our plan includes a simple way to show candidates and politicians that their communities want this. To tell the story of solutions, we've just launched a new report with the Climate Council. And with your help, we'll make sure that every election candidate and MP understands it deeply. You can see, next slide, thanks Laura. The Protect What You Love campaign is going to be the focus of our appeal, not just to everyone who cares about climate, but everyone who's struggling with cost of living right now. Next slide, thanks Laura. We've done a lot of research. We've done the polling, we've done the survey, which you may have helped us with. We've reached out to over 1,000 families in the last few months to find out what their experience has been. And it's already achieved significant media coverage. And I'm really excited to say that the Climate Minister got in touch with us on the same day to say that he wants to have that conversation. So the door is open, but we've got to push. We've got to push hard. Next slide, thanks, Laura. The Under Pressure report gives us that foundation. Next slide, thanks, Laura. And you can see some of the key messages here. Probably things that won't surprise you too much, but things that are not necessarily being felt by the majority of Australians. That climate change is actually making costs of living worse. That parents are being forced to make an impossible choice between today and the future for their kids. And that the climate crisis is creating a cost of living crisis, whether that's because of oil and gas or because of the unnatural weather events that are becoming more frequent and extreme. Equally, climate solutions can be cost of living solutions, and that can be applicable to the millions of families who are under pressure right now with the right policy settings. Next slide, thanks, Laura. So to demonstrate that the community wants action, we're playing a crucial role in the climate movement to make support for solutions from parents and guardians unignorable. We're rolling out thousands and thousands of yard signs with special messages for key places and ahead of the federal election. And we're starting this activity tonight, and I hope you'll be part of it. We know we can do this. Next slide, thanks, Laura, because we've done it before. We've engaged almost 1 million parents ahead of the last election and over 100 candidates directly signing up to our campaign. We delivered over 5,000 yard signs as part of the Climate Blitz last time round, and we can do it again. Next slide, thanks. This time we're teaming up with as many partners as we can find. And we're going to collectively deliver the strategic impact we need to protect the gains we made in the last election on climate policy, whilst also increasing climate ambition at the federal level. And it all starts with each of us here tonight. Mike will take us through how this all works once we've heard Sophia's analysis of the political opportunities. But before that, let's hear how we can get the courage to act at a time like this. I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Steve Biddulph. So Steve is one of the world's best known parent educators. He probably needs no introduction for many of you, but in case this is your first time enjoying Steve's expertise, he's a psychologist of 30 years. He's now retired, continues to write and teach. His books, including The Secret of Happy Children, Raising Boys, The New Manhood, and more recently, Wild Creature Mind, have populated the homes of millions and in 31 languages. His latest book explores a radical new insight. And this is something that I'm really excited to hear about. The cognitive science that we can learn about how to not just respond to the big mental health crisis that's taking place all around the world, but also the struggles of war and climate. So, Steve was also voted Father of the Year, so it gives him incredible qualification to be here tonight with Parents for Climate. And he's also a member of the Order of Australia for his work with young people's mental health. He's got 2 grown-up children and lives in Tasmania with his wife and co-author Sharon, and assorted wombats, which I'm really excited to learn more about. Please post any questions you have for Steve in the chat, and our wonderful moderators will collect them and pass them on for the Q&A. Steve, thank you so much for joining, and I'll pass over to you now.
Thank you, Nick. And that was such an impressive beginning, showing an impressive organization. And hello to everybody watching. And I should explain that really I should have retired by now. I was all set to just go canoeing on the river and things like that. But I couldn't walk away. You know, several generations of Australian kids were raised with my books, and even if they weren't, it doesn't matter. That they're facing the worst time in human history with what's going on, and I couldn't just leave that. And so you'll find me a little bit shambolic and not the most cognitively sort of organized human being, but I'm still standing, and I'm so pleased and proud to make even a small contribution to everyone's work at Parents for Climate. And so I'll give it my best shot, and I hope you'll excuse if it's a little bit fumbling and stumbling. What I'm aiming to do in the time I've got is 2 things. It's how to stay strong and joyful and calm, even in a world that is in absolute chaos, present and unfolding. It's a pretty tall order, and the temptation to panic or despair is huge. The more you know, the more you feel those temptations, but we just can't afford to do that. And so I'll be talking from a mental health standpoint, how to be what's needed for our own families, but also in the big world. And the fact that it's really vital for turning things around, that a grassroots organization of parents in this country is doing what you're doing, and will grow to the scale that it can make all the difference. So my first message is that in working in the climate field, we have to face the worst right from the beginning and get that out of the way. It's just better to have that out of the way. Now, everyone's got their own kind of lens on climate change and what it means and what it'll look like. But it's scientists like, I'm a scientist, and my fellow scientists have been fairly cautious. We're a cautious kind of people. But my particular lens is I've been involved in working with refugees and refugee rights for about 20 years. And so that's how I look at it. And in the decades, going back over decades, the figure of 100 million or so refugees has been the normal figure. It hovers around 100 million at any one time. There's people are settled, more refugees are created. That's, one in 100 of the human race is always a refugee. In recent years, the last 2 or 3 years, that figure has started to kick up, and it's now around 130 million. And so it started to tilt upwards for the first time. And an organization called the Institute for Peace and Justice, which is a very international, very, very capable organization, looked at the impacts of climate change on the refugee numbers, because refugee numbers, if you think about it, are a really good measure of how the planet is going, how the world is, the state of the world. They put their cutoff point at the year 2050, which is 25 years from now. And if you add 25 to the age of your children, so my grandchildren would be 34 and 31, that gives you 2050 is not that far away. But their modeling, which was very, very comprehensive, it took years to do, came up with a refugee figure in the year 2050 from the effects of climate change of 1.2 billion human beings on the move. 1.2 billion, which is 1 in 8 of the human race. Now, we don't do refugees very well now. It is inconceivable how we will be able to manage that kind of world and what's behind that kind of world. And so we won't go too much further, but I wanted you to have some scope of the urgency in case you've been somewhat unmotivated around climate change. It always comes down to the 4 Fs. What it'll look like is floods, fires, and those are the short-term ones. The ones below the dotted line, famine, and fighting. Because as we already see, all of these things are happening already in some part of the world. The future is unevenly distributed. Some parts, the future is here in some places already, and so enough of that. It's enough for me to know that, to want to spend the rest of my life trying to turn this around. And the second mental health message is it's important to sort of just know the situation is dreadful. Therefore, we may as well crack on. And what we know from the studies is that activism is very good for your mental health. It's good for your kids to see that you're involved in it, and it's good for you to be addressing things. It is not good for our mental health to have our heads in the sand, because a part of us knows that that's the case and we become split. The human being is just so far better off when their values, their beliefs, their actions, and their heart are pointed in the same direction. And so, looking back over my 71 years, activism is what good people do. They get involved in something they care about and they give their time to it, whether it's animal welfare or women's safety, stopping violence, saving the forests. We've all had backgrounds of caring about things beyond our own personal situation. What climate change does is it swoops all of those into a single bag. If you care about animal welfare, in the Townsville floods, 400,000 cattle drowned in one night. That's an animal welfare catastrophe of unbelievable proportions. The same with the Morrison fires of 2019 that swept through Eastern Australia. Whatever you care about, it'll be 100 times worse when the climate begins to take its effect. And so the job of and I've been running activist training for many years, and this particular message that if you take, you all know this graph, it's called the normal distribution. Anything about human beings, weight, height, intelligence, strength, always fits into this graph. There are people on the extremes and there are most people in the middle. Now, if you're a climate activist, it means, say you're up this end of the graph and you care intensely about climate. You see it as the most important thing in life to do for your children and for the world. This is a one end of the scale of climate concern. at the other end of the scale are people who, for whatever reason, think that it's a completely non-issue, doesn't matter, or it's made up, or um, um, just simply don't think it should be given any attention at all. What you're immediately seeing now, of course, is that up here is most people. And most people are often things like parents. And they're very, very busy looking after the day-to-day needs of their families and their kids, making a living, taking care of life. In causes and purposes, they would care if they had time or if they had information or they had a way to care, but it's not on a day-to-day radar. The good thing about this graph is to help you as an activist. That first of all, and I'm being provocative, of course, and I could be wrong. I always should say I could be wrong. It is a complete waste of time to talk to people down here. Their reasons for being there are either neurotic or malign, and I wouldn't waste my time with them. You will never shift them, and many of us have tried. However, the people here are open, they're intelligent, and they're caring people. And the thing is, if we move the pinnacle of that curve by 2%, that is a dramatic number of people shifting a little bit. That's enough for a change of government. That's all it needs, complete change of government. If we move them by about 3%, we can make an incumbent government change its policies radically to respond to that. So all we have to do is move the middle a little bit. Does that make sense? Is that kind of coming across? And yeah, that's great. And so shifting the middle matters. And part of talking to the middle is looking out, as Nick said, for these false choices that are put onto us. As if, we've fought for the Tasmanian forests for 50 years. It was always a false choice between jobs versus saving the forest. That was never true. The forest industry shed 90% of its jobs even when it had absolute free rein. They weren't interested in jobs. They were just interested in profits. And framing a conflict between climate change and cost of living is another bullshit choice. And I'm so glad you've identified that fixing the climate creates income, it creates better prosperity and better standard of living. And of course, if we wind forward the clock by 10 years, we're worried about the cost of food. We will be worried in 10 years about the actual availability of food, whether there actually is food. And so we need to have a perspective on that. Now, in martial arts and in every sort of Buddhist tradition, there's this idea that the more drastic the situation, the more important it is to stay calm. And what the normal response which everybody has towards the world we live in, which is perfectly natural in the kind of way we were raised and the way our psychology was shaped, is to get incredibly anxious. And I now see anxiety as the second biggest problem in the world after climate change, and they're closely intertwined. The problem with anxiety is it is immobilizing. It's not a natural state of the brain. It freezes you. The word that comes in front of anxiety most commonly is crippling. And so I wrote a book, as you saw, it's called Wild Creature Mind, that specifically addresses that. And I've been talking to the publishers this afternoon, and we're going to send a copy to every branch of Parents for Climate within the next couple of weeks. We just want you to have this. And because my time is short here, and I just want to do one small exercise with you, the main message of the book is that we're a civilization in trouble because we've only used one hemisphere. There's a very good neuroscientist called Ian McGilchrist who says that we became a left hemisphere culture. And so we see everything in life is to be exploited. Whereas our right hemisphere is a part of our brain that harmonizes us with people and things. And so the way our right hemisphere works, though, is it doesn't use words. It uses body sensations. It speaks through the body. And so the way to get out of anxiety is to stop going around and around in circles in your left brain and tune into your body and notice what it's doing. And so, for instance, if I invite you to just try this exercise, just think of climate change and just say those words or that concept in your mind. And as you're thinking climate change, go down the middle of your body, your throat, your chest, your heart, your tummy, your belly, anywhere in your body, and just notice what are the sensations that happen when you think of climate change, when you think of the future and of your children. And you'll notice there are very definite sensations. And if we had time, and if you want to practice this afterwards, what you do with that is you tune into those sensations and you notice where they live. And instead of saying, I am anxious, say, there is something in me which is anxious. And as you say it in those words, it begins to give you some spaciousness. It's like there's you and there's the anxiety. And if you try and apply words. So say it's in you, I might say, I feel it in like a churning in my gut. And so I use the word churning and I say, okay, it's churning. And then what happens is you apply that word, the sensation will shift and it may dissolve, or it may say, oh no, it's actually more like a clenching now, or it's moving up into my tummy, and so whenever you pay attention to your body's sensations, they'll begin to process. And one of two things will happen. They'll either move and resolve, because your animal part of your mind will be saying, okay, I'm in bed now, I'm at night, or I'm in my home safe. I actually don't need to feel anxious right now. And it will just resolve, because an animal doesn't worry about things that are not happening right now. Or it will strengthen into what you could call resolve. And so resolve is an emotion that I think is very applicable here. That I think what we'll need to do this long haul journey, it will take the rest of our lives to do this, is like what I call fiercely loving. And so it has a kind of a slow, quiet rage to it, but you can't be like that all the time. And so there's a loving in there as well. It's like a hybrid emotion that we haven't very much in our culture. So that, so you think of Gina Reinhardt, for instance, she's the richest woman in Australia, also the saddest woman in Australia, probably. And so the people that we're wanting to change their behavior, we don't want to hate, we don't want to make enemies of, we want to feel compassion for, but we so fiercely need them to change what they're doing. And so can you see how that's an unusual combination? But that's what we need to have. And by being in an organization like Parents for Climate, what you get is that you get the power of, it's like singing in a choir. When you're exhausted, you can take a breath, the rest of the choir will carry you. It's an incredible thing. We have to, what we've learned from the American elections is online community is not real community. We have to have physical presence with each other on a regular basis with real human beings. We make that our tribe, and we hang with, a house full of people who meet once a month, who look after each other, so that we can continue the fight and get creative about how we join into some of the big actions that are going to happen. There are going to be student strikes in the millions in the coming 2 or 3 years. It's going to need the adults to be alongside them, because the kids can't handle this on their own. On their own, they'll just go to despair or go to violence. And so we have to be the steadying force in the whole culture, that there's a calm, steady, optimistic, but very, very committed journey where we, as the middle of the community, move it to a place of change where governments grow a spine and do what's needed. I've run out of time. It took it, at least my brain kept working. I'm very relieved, and I hope it's made some kind of sense. And I'll hand over to people who are much better informed now about what to get ahead and do. Thanks so much, and all my love to everyone. I'll be, as long as I'm standing, at least I'll be able to smile and wave. And let's get ahead now with the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much. I feel like I could definitely enjoy some more wisdom from you for some time. We will run our webinar 2 times, so thank you for sharing that. And it made me reflect when I was reading Wild Creature Mind. You similarly brought an honesty and a plain speaking to the situation we're in, which sometimes in the climate movement feels like a taboo. We can't say how bad it is. And I believe you swore and excused it and said you wouldn't do it again, but you used the F word in your book, which actually made me laugh out loud, but also made me feel seen. And I think that noticing how we're feeling about those things and being empowered to do something about it is so exciting, especially when we're not alone. And yeah, now you've heard about the importance of that activism and what it takes to do that sustainably. I'd also love to introduce you to our next expert. Sophia Walter is the Deputy Director for Solutions for Climate Australia and a federal policy advocacy expert. Solutions for Climate is a project of Climate Action Network Australia, an organisation of which Parents for Climate is a member. Sophia's job is working with people and organisations to shift the federal government's current commitments on climate change. And Sophia's worked with environmental organisations all over the world, as well as in journalism and on the Kevin 07 election campaign. Sophia's a Queenslander, true blue, me too, but now lives on Dharawal country in New South Wales in northern Illawarra. And I'm excited to say that this World Children's Day, we get to introduce Sophia as a parent for climate to be. Over to you, Sophia.
Thanks, Nick, and thanks everybody, and thanks in particular, Steve. That was really deeply affecting, actually, really beautiful, you know, and motivating. Also makes me feel a little bit sheepish because I'm getting into this sort of maybe slightly shallower level of things about how we win here, and but also I do feel like maybe it's the applicability of what the lessons that you're sharing with us. So yeah, so thank you for that. I've got a screen to share. Some of it has already been said to you. So yes, Solutions for Climate is a federal advocacy project of Climate Action Network Australia. And you've heard a bit about my experience too. I just want to start by saying we are non-partisan, and some of this sounds partisan, but genuinely our long-term goal is to lift climate ambition across the parliament. And in fact, it's quite core to us that we're trying to get the coalition, the Liberal National Coalition, in a better place. But I'm going to be a little bit sort of explicit and open about the federal political strategy here. But yeah, just bear in mind that long-term objective, which I think we all share. I just wanted to share this video. So many of us now have a story like this. This is me evacuating a flood a couple of years ago. You couldn't hear my partner's voice just then, but he was like, bags higher. But you know, once I was showing this video and it was sort of a rare thing, and now it feels like almost all of us have got some kind of a climate story to share like this. And you've heard a bit more about my professional background as well, but and the fact I'm 6 months pregnant at the moment. So, you know, there's so many reasons that we are dedicated to working on climate together. What I wanted to talk about today was really the federal political context, and, you know, we're expecting an election. We were thinking it might be April or May. I was in Parliament this week, and there were stronger than just whispers that it could be as soon as March. Oh, it's got some. Did I do that? Anyway, sorry. It looks like maybe someone's drawing on it. I'm not sure how that's possible. But anyway, so anyway, I'll go through a bit of context, talk about the strategy for this election, which is a shared strategy, and also how we as parents and a parent-to-be are impactful in this space. So first of all, I just wanted to, I have no idea what those scribbles are from, if anyone has a clue. No? So weird. I'm looking at you,
I think
Laura.
it would be a little Zoom feature that you didn't predict. But please carry on.
It's preparation for your future
Sorry,
parenting
Sophia,
career,
it's not
Sophia.
me, I promise. It's not my kids.
That's all right. Anyway, it's good. I think we're all used to these kinds of little chaotic bits in there. So I just want to take us back to 2022, because sometimes we can feel, and I can see, you know, from the discussion already, that we feel pessimistic and really cynical about where politics are at, and for good reason. But do you know, in 2022, we won. Like, we made it the climate election. We got out there with all of those signs that you just saw, you know, that actually the next one, you know, that we made so much noise about the climate, and it was conclusively the climate election. All the political commentariat was saying it. And even the coalition, although they didn't take the lesson from it that I wish they did, they have now had to acknowledge that climate is an issue that they have to address. And that's something they weren't doing before. And just a little bit more about the context. This is how far we reached in 2022. That's extraordinary. And that was, this is sort of on behalf of Climate Action Network, all of the organisations which include Australian Parents for Climate Action. But that is an extraordinary reach that we got to. And the political impact of that, like, I also think we can't forget, because the Labor government got its flaws, absolutely, particularly hasn't done anywhere near enough to phase out coal and gas, which is, I'll talk more about in a second. But we've got a huge structural change in the Future Made in Australia Act. We've legislated a climate target. We've brought in fuel efficiency standards. There's actually been just a monumental shift in the trajectory of Australian climate policy. And we did that. And we can't forget that. If it wasn't for our advocacy before the 2022 election, the parties we wouldn't have had as climate friendly parliament as we have now, and the parties wouldn't have felt the mandate to do more on climate. So even though we can feel pessimistic for good reason, I think we can also feel optimistic and powerful in the space we're in. So as we've talked about, climate has dropped. Cost of living is now what people, and the various things associated with, well, the three things associated with cost of living: housing affordability, grocery bills, and power bills, are people's higher priority. And as Nick said earlier, for good reason. And I really, I think, you know, we all respect and understand deeply that that is concerning for people. It's still a top tier issue for people, climate change, which is pretty extraordinary in the environment we're in, actually. But it means this is probably going to be a cost of living election. But the climate, we can still, you know, show the links about why climate remains really important for people. This is just to show what we're up against. It's incredible that we're as powerful as we are when our opponents are spending this much money. And this is a complicated slide that I just really quickly wanted to go through, because I know amongst this group, most people will know, but I think it's really important we keep reinforcing. This graph shows that 75% consistently, 75% of greenhouse gas emissions globally come from the fossil fuel industry, the mining and burning of fossil fuels. That's a foundation. Australia is up there. It's us, Saudi Arabia, and Russia as the top fossil fuel exporters in the world. So that is the main game here. But in Australia, in the political context, we need to make space for the phase out of coal and gas by introducing these clean and fair solutions. I don't think that hump we saw in the middle of the graph Steve showed us, kind of, that a lot of people want to maintain the lives we've got. And I think bringing in this kind of ambition loop of the clean solutions and maintaining and improving our lives through the clean renewables and household efficiency, electrification, quieter cars, all of that creates the space for the government to phase out fossil fuels. Oh, I realise I have to go much faster. This is a meaty slide. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on it, so don't feel you have to read it all at once. 30 groups, or 27 groups from across the climate movement got together, including Australian Parents for Climate Action, and devised 5 objectives for the next federal election. And we share these objectives, and we might carry them out in slightly different ways, but these are at the core of them. So the first one is a more climate friendly parliament. That might mean more champions in the Liberal National Party. It might mean more Teals. It might mean more Greens. It might mean that Labor feels they've got a stronger mandate. That's number one. Number two, climate is seen as impactful. We need that for the long term. We need all politicians to frankly feel afraid that if they don't have decent climate policy, they'll feel electoral pain. And that's kind of a foundational piece of our pre-election work. This third one's really interesting. And just to save time, I'm going to cut forward a bit and tell you the strategy as well. So this term, the Labor government did nowhere near enough to phase out coal and gas. In fact, they dodged it, even though it's the most important thing Australia can do for, to tackle climate change. We need to teach Labor that they can't keep doing that. They can't have another term of not doing enough. And just to cut ahead to the strategy, the best way to do that would be to go to Labor Greens marginal seats and Labor Greens swing voters, and talk to those communities about why the phase out of fossil fuels is important, and potentially motivate people to vote on it and therefore influence Labor to be concerned and have better policy. I can't think of a better spokes for Labor Greens swing voters than parents. And that is an absolutely key niche that I think we've got here. The next one is to teach the Liberal National Coalition that they literally can't get the number of seats they need to make a majority government without decent climate policy. And the Teals provide a really important buffer there for being able to make the majority government, and also at the same time teaching them that lesson that they need decent climate policy. It's really hard for them to get the numbers they need without the inner city. And the inner city is caring about climate. If we can stretch that out to suburban areas, to regional areas, and again, parents are just an absolute key messenger for influencing that hump on the graph. And then finally, we talk about the clean solutions, the renewable energy, the household efficiency, the solar, rooftop solar on schools. And this is kind of what I call rolling out the red carpet for the parties to walk down. This is where we can present the opportunities to them to appeal to their voters. And parents have actually been providing an absolute leadership role on this, including on that report that Nick referred to earlier. So I'm just about out of time, I think. And I've kind of made the point here. We need to show that hump that parents want to see better climate action. And I better finish it up there. But there's my email address if you'd like to get in touch.
Well, again, thank you so much, Sophia. It's so great to see that. I've already seen a lot of those goals and strategies articulated, but it's so great to see it packaged so neatly. Thank you for conveying that here. And couldn't agree more. We know that the data suggests that parents actually have this incredible impact, especially on election times. And frankly, especially mums. Mums are just dynamite for political parties. And absolutely, to all the mums here tonight and grandmothers, you have more power in the next 6 months than you probably do outside of that. So let's use it. Look, we're going to do a quick Q&A, and there's been some fantastic questions coming through. We might not have time for all of them, so I'll do my best. And what I might do is sort of throw to Sophia and Steve to respond to them, and perhaps take one at a time. And if you feel like you've really got something to jump on there, Steve or Sophia, just let me know. I might start with Susie's question because, look, I think this one's really helpful from a strategic point of view. Susie asks, I'd love to hear how Steve and Sophia's thoughts on how to engage that center of the bell curve on climate, particularly families who are concerned but not active. Steve, how do we reach the center? Oh, and I'll get you, don't forget to unmute.
Okay, I think a lot of this is about normalizing being a climate activist, in the sense that it's people like us who, we're just like the people. We are the people in the middle, in almost every way, except for this concern that we've arrived at. And so, by having grassroots groups, we make it it's as normal as doing a school fete to blockade a bank, or have a meeting to lobby your politician. It's just something that regular people do. because 80% of the decision making that people make is not cognitive. It's an emotional sense and a feeling of this feels right to me, and we're a herd animal in many ways. And if we see people like us doing this, then we think, oh, maybe I could do that. I have concerns. I have deep misgivings about climate. I just didn't know there was a respectable, safe, sensible way to act on that. And everyone I'm seeing on the screen looks like someone I'd be very happy to be, with in an action or in a meeting. You look joinable, relatable, and sensible. And I think you just keep doing that. Be in the middle, and people will come and be part of, especially if it's Sophia was very positive in her presentation. It made you feel like, yeah, we can do this. Yep. That's a thing that a lot of activists don't realize. They get incredibly earnest and extreme because of their focus. And this organization doesn't come across like that. I'll stop there so Sophia can say some more. Yep.
Actually, you said what I was going to say, which is our power as messengers. And I would say that is the main way of influencing, is finding people's trusted messengers and providing them a balanced, which we can do, a balanced conversation about the issues.
Sophia, Philippa asks, how is our energy best placed in the balance between positive, pro-renewable, and ending fossil fuels?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Thanks, Philippa. And it's, I would say this is quite a unique election in how place-based it is. So if you live in an electorate that has a high Green vote and that Labor is feeling worried about, then please pour your energy into the dirty out, phase out of coal and gas. If you're in a seat where we need to teach the coalition a lesson in particular, then I would be focusing on rolling out these fair and clean solutions messages. And I say fair because, for example, on household electrification, we expect both the Liberal National Coalition and Labor to deliver policies on that before the election. But we expect that Labor's will have a lot more fairness values in them. So that will be a really important part of it.
Look, I'll try and fit in one more each and see how we're going for time. Steve, Andrea asks a great question, which is that, parents are so determined, but also so time poor. How do we engage more of the older generation to become more active, especially with their peers? And this is something I think you've got a little bit of skin in the game on.
Yes, I'm helping to lead a campaign for lowering the voting age. And it should be lowered to 16. And we're planning some actions around in the next election of we're still getting legal advice about this, but taking our voting papers outside of the booth and getting a teenager to ticket for us, which will, cause all kinds of mayhem. But we'll draw attention to the fact that a fifth of the electorate has no vote, and because they're under 18. And they're the ones who care about the future because they'll be alive in the future. And highlighting that we tend to vote for our own interests rather than the interests of the next generation, which is shameful. And so what I'm saying to older people is, shame on you for going on cruises and playing golf all the time and flying around the world. We're committing genocide against our own grandchildren if we continue along this path. Get involved, and we need to be the steadying, and we have nothing to lose. So pretty dramatic stance to my fellow geriatrics, because we definitely have a role. We can afford to be locked up and not have kids at home to feed, and so I see a really strong role for old people.
Oh, look, There's so many good questions coming through. There's also some fantastic answering going on collectively. So thank you to the community for helping to respond to each other's. I'll do one last one, and this one's maybe just more topical. For Sophia, Siobhan asks about nuclear. So Siobhan asks, I live in the outer suburbs of Sydney. Many people are sold on nuclear and not interested in looking into the complex arguments as to why it's not a good option for Australia. What's the best strategy to cut through nuclear framing quickly?
Yeah, I saw nuclear come up a few times, and I'm sure we could have a whole, every time nuclear comes up, it's hard to cut the discussion short, but we have done some quite comprehensive testing on this, so I can answer in a fairly clear way. So what we found is that first of all, women are the most persuadable on nuclear at the moment. So again, like having these balanced conversations from trusted messengers. So it's absolutely your place to be talking about it. And the theme that people are, I guess more disengaged people are most interested in is talking about that it's too risky for all the reasons: cost, waste, climate. But that risk kind of where people are at the moment is, which Steve sort of alluded to, is feeling a bit unsafe and kind of more talking about security. You know, we don't want to risk it. We've got a path. We've got a good trajectory on clean energy. Let's stay the path. There is a second part to that, which I forgot, but I'll write in the I'll write in the chat, and I'll try and get to some of these other comments in there too. Thanks.
Look, I'd love to keep this going. I'm enjoying this too much, but my responsibility is to get us to take action as well as listening to these amazing speakers. So I really want to introduce our next speaker, Mike Pulsford, the campaign manager, the guy who's been working super hard all week to make sure that we have the plan in place tonight. And look, I'm really grateful to all the work Mike's been doing. I'm going to pass over to Mike to keep time short. Mike, what can we do to make a difference?
Hey, can I share my screen? I think it'll just be more efficient. Just trying to. Let's go to that. Hi, everybody. I'm Mike. I'm a Pisces. Best of all people. Neurodivergent climate campaigner, whatnot. What's the plan after all of this? Oh my God, we're in crisis. Everything's terrible. And we have to be brave and calm, no pressure. And there's all kinds of things we can do. And it's complicated. Like, look at the chat. So many ideas, so many things, so many places we could put our energy. That they're all true. But what campaigning is about is getting a lot of people to push on the system in one spot. Like, if we're all kind of pulling in different directions, something sort of happens. If you're trying to, like, I don't know, roll a car away, you all push on the same side, right? If you're trying to move something very heavy, like Australian political inertia, we all try to push on the one spot. What is that spot? What are we going to do? I'm glad you asked. It's my job to tell you. So, two things. How do we shift the middle? We've got to make climate concern visible. This is the thing that Steve spoke to about normalizing giving a shit, normalizing having a view, normalizing expressing your view. I was very afraid the first time I put a yard sign up. I was like, I've never done anything like this before. I was like 45 or something. It's ridiculous. I'd never done it before in my whole life. It was intimidating. And I did it. It was okay. And now I can, in good faith, ask other people who've never done this before and say, hey, you can do it. It's going to be all right. I did it. I was afraid. It's okay. Well, first thing we're going to do, make climate concern visible. If politicians have started to think that our climate concern has gone away in the community, let's demonstrate that is not true. Let's make it visible. Really simple way to do that, signs. These are the two we've got. So Sophia said, depending on where you are in the country, there's different things that's useful to do. If you're somewhere where the main fight is between Liberals and Labor, what we want to do is be talking about clean energy. That's basically the deal. Not such a good idea to weaken the distinction between the Labor and Liberals there. We want to kind of make that distinction clear, and that's around having a plan for clean energy. Labor do-ish, they could be better. We want them to be better. The coalition, not really. Those signs are for there. And in places where the main fight is between Labor and the Greens, who both have some sort of plan for clean energy, we're highlighting the distinction when it comes to actually getting rid of the bad stuff. No new coal and gas. That's the vibe. What's the plan? Starting in December, dozens and dozens of organizations, including us, are going to put up thousands and thousands and thousands of these signs around the country. A lot of organizations are doing this the first weekend of December. It's a bit hard for parents to do that in silly season. We're just giving ourselves the summer holidays. So if you can put up a sign, if you can host what I'm calling a stash or distribution point, looks like this, a little pile on your porch, it's very low-fi, a place where other people can come and pick them up, that's great. Put one on your sign, on your fence, great. Have 10 on your porch, someone can come pick them up, great. Or you could join a local group. We have local groups all over the country, and they are kind of the engines of this distribution. Getting involved in a local group is one of the most powerful ways you can kind of amplify that. And then from February next year, we're going to meet candidates and MPs and just explain to them how climate solutions can be cost of living solutions. And in the very short term, we've got this form we'd like you to fill out. I just pasted it in the chat. The robots tell me it takes 4 minutes. You could probably do it in less if you're clever. This is just how you can say how you want to be involved in the Protect What You Love campaign. And it is the link in the chat. If people could actually just start following it and filling it out while I talk, what this will let you do is say, hey, I'd like to do this amazing thing, lots of energy. Or hey, I'd like to only do this little thing. I'd like to put up a sign. I'd like to put up lots of signs. I'd like to meet an MP. Actually, I don't want to do any of those things. Actually, I've got no time. I'll just give you some money. This form will let you do all of those things. It will show us how many signs we should order and for where. It'll show us who can do what. And it'll help us make all kinds of decisions. And it will also make us feel very good. And as Steve's pointed out, it will make you feel good too, because your actions will be in line with the panic, the dread, the love, the fierce love, all of those things. I'm going to stop talking now and stop sharing my screen. That's kind of blurted at you for like minutes. What was I thinking?
No, that's great, Mike. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for inspiring us and showing us like a simple action that we can take right here, right now.
Yeah,
it's World Children's Day. That was the inspiration for this moment. But seeing you all here tonight, it's absolutely fantastic. If I could just ask one more favor. Can you, if your camera is ready, could you turn it on? Could you put your hand up in the air, show that you're committed? Because the next best thing to being inspired here tonight is our ability to inspire so many more. We'll grab some screenshots. I wonder, Laura, could you grab some screenshots of the tiles? We've got over 100 people here taking action together in this moment, connected on this issue, caring about the same thing. We all come from different walks of life. We're all in different parts of the country, but we're going to make this happen. And you, Laura, let us know when you got it.
Just keep your hands up, everyone.
How many hands am I meant to put up? I've only got 2.
As many
There's
hands
a few
as
screens to get through. Unfortunately, there's a few names. I'm not seeing some faces. Don't be shy, everyone.
Go, go, go.
I want to see your beautiful faces. Legends. Thank you.
Oh, and we'll be sending around an email with the links that you've heard tonight and a copy of the recording and presentation and whatnot. So if you didn't manage to capture something that you needed to take action, we'll be sending that out in the next few days. Over to you, Nick.
Look, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Mike. And thank you to everyone who's joined our call. From the Parents for Climate team, I wish you all a wonderful end of the year and hope you all reconnect with the ones you love and the ones who love you, because together we won't let them down. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.